You've caught me during a massive bout of insomnia. So I did one of those, fuck it, and decided to come into the shed and show one of you a request for my workflow with trauma. Now, for obvious reasons, I can't show you the imagery itself, which is why bits of the screen will be blurred. But I think it's probably okay to play you a bit of the music, show you the sound set I made up, and demonstrate my workflow on this particular project. Unlike videos of late, which are kind of semi-scripted in my head with an idea of how they're going to be edited together, this is me just sitting down after having an hour and a half's sleep, just going to kind of go with the flow, if that's okay. But I do think it's kind of fun because this particular show, I used this thing called the Fuckbox, which I have links below, and used very, very few commercial samples. So episode 1 is usually a total clusterfuck. So what I'm going to do is going to dive in and have a look at how I set up my kind of folder structure in episode 2, because I tend to have a system that goes between projects, but I also adapt my system for that project. Something that happened during trauma was that I had this studio wired in. So basically I had to do everything on portable and remote rigs, which changed my workflow somewhat. So if we have a look in Ep 2, it all starts with what the edit sends me, and that was DDC post. And you can see that was the rough cut there. This is the locked cut. So cut 20. They went through 20 cuts to get to the log. So what they sent me was a split channels movie, which basically has on the left dial and effects and on the right music. But also they kindly sent me stereo versions of these. So basically I pull these into Logic or Pro Tools, mute off or don't import the tracks from the movie, and then just import the audio files which sync perfectly. So if we go into the template, basically I created a template for the TV show, and then as I went through episode 1, I basically went chronologically. I would update the template, and basically the template for Ep 2 is then basically what I ended with on Ep 1. And you can see I've got all sorts of kind of colouring systems of different processes that I've been through. So here are the different cues. I always have a project. It's almost like an airport prefix. Tra means for trauma. Series 1, wishful thinking. Episode 2, and then 1M01. I could probably just go MO1 because there aren't different reels, but it's just force of habit. And the other thing I do is I put a title in, which I didn't used to do, and I used to have to kind of learn 1M01's the thing, and then it was just like, no, just put the bloody what it is. Olds are basically every time I revise a cue, I dump the previous version in olds and go up a version. Particularly at the beginning of a new franchise, you can go like through 15 revisions of something. And so many times I've actually had a director or producers go, actually, could we just go back to what we started with? Because I think we've gone down some blind alleys, and see where we're at. And as you can see with this one, I was kind of in the flow. There's not multiples of cues. So there's a couple of these 3s, 4s, and you can see I get more into a flow. And basically it was really just a couple of passes of each cue with notes from the very trusting director and producers. Amazing team on this one. Bounces, and you can see here again very few duplicate bounces. Now the bounces are basically what I sent to the edit to place in, and what tends to happen when you're revising lots is you'll see lots of different version numbers, but you can see on here basically it's pretty much one of each. And what's happened there, again talking about the trustworthiness of this production, is they gave me notes but didn't require for me to send back the actioned notes. It was simply a trust there. So you can see just maybe on 1M11 they wanted to see something again, and a couple of these over here. So again, very smooth process. And again, I think one of the real keys at the end of the process is to give the dub something it can really work with, so that you don't have to do recalls whilst they're dubbing. TV and film these days is an incredibly fast and busy process. And it's not just us poor composers, it's the directors and the producers are having to work at an absolute rate. And everything is now, instead of being a linear process, it's all stacked up. So they'll be grading, they'll be doing ADR, they'll be, editing the next episode all at one go. So really you going, I've just warmed up that hi-hat, can you check out this cue again, is actually not what they're interested in either. What they're interested in is a non-egotistical composer who, when they say, can you warm up the EQ, one, knows what they mean, 2 agrees with the course of action, and 3 actions it. So basically, let's have a look at 1M01, which is the opening to episode. Oh, blood, I've just joined this. Can't remember who it was who said there is a really interesting thing called Discord, which is it's kind of like it reminds me of Slack. It's like an instant messaging thing, and there's this thing called the Composers Network. I've linked below, but I don't know how to use Discord, and it is bleeping. So let's open 1M01 now. As you'll see when we open it, I've got the dial effects, music, and the film within Logic. Now, I usually wouldn't do this. The reason I did it on Trauma is I was working on the go, so working on my laptop. And when I do that, I have to put it into Logic because I don't want to take my Pro Tools dongle around with me. What I would usually do is have Pro Tools running in the background, and I would basically, with I think it's an IAC MIDI thing, I would send MTC out of that IAC thing, and would lock up Pro Tools. Now, the reason I run Pro Tools in the background is it's for a number of reasons, but the main thing is I see Pro Tools as controlling the show, episode, or entire film with all of the reels in, and Logic is basically the specific cues. So what you'll see here is I've got the movie in there, I've got the dial and effects, and the temp there, which gives you, in an instant, you can really see what you need to do. And you can see, actually, since the temp and me composing the score, we've added some cues in there, and we've actually reduced one of these cues down to just a kind of a stub there. It's probably for an end of part, actually. You can see the end of the parts there. The reason that happens is the sound designers will put piles of stuff in, and particularly with this thing set in a hospital, they'll find that actually that creates enough tension and no need for it to be overscored. What you can see is I have my full mix and my stems. And the reason I have 2 sets is for what's called checkerboarding, which only occurs at this point, actually. It's quite a score-light series, much to my relief, not because I'm work-shy. I value music, and I think its appearance in TV and film should be valued and not just omnipresent. So basically, this is one of the strong reasons for having Pro Tools in the background, is when I'm working on 2M16, what happens is Logic will synchronize and Pro Tools will play back the previous cue, so I can move from one cue to another. I think what's great about this is the instant ability to lay back cues and review basically maybe an entire part. Okay, so let's get back to this Logic session. So as I say, it's pretty much all stuff that I've made for Trauma, and what I've done is I've bundled this together in a Trauma sound set so you guys can have it. I'm sorry, I only work in EXS24, which basically means that there are limitations to PC and Cubase users. Maybe some kind, generous person may be able to, create contact versions. So the only stuff, to my knowledge, that I use that is commercial is Soundust's amazing instant cool Ghost piano, which I used in a few different iterations. Leo Abraham's Enigma, it's a fantastic guitar library, and it was a total honour that Leo actually got to replace his Enigma samples with live guitars. We did that remotely. Again, I have a hugely trusting relationship with Leo, but also it was great to create stuff with his kind of sampled sound set and go, okay, I want the real guitars to do this again. And then other than that, I basically used some rhythmic Evos, which are really cornerstone of the string stuff. I did load up some LCO, but I never actually used it, and I just caned the chamber evolutions by Olafur Arnold, these long. Just instant class. So let's have a little zip through these different sounds. Bit kind of spacey thing. I'm referring to Atticus Ross. And all of these made with my fuckbox, so it's basically me putting stuff through a pedal board. Me adjusting the time knobs on the kind of delay pedals to create those slight bends. So as you can see, I've absolutely caned. using that with my favourite effect, which is AU pitch, because it's a fairly coarse way of changing the pitch with a digital plugin that introduces loads of gorgeous kind of artifacts and stuff. So that's pitch down an octave. It's really struggling to make sense of it. Go siren. So added some delay. And then this vocal transformer, again, just using the wrong plugin for this kind of sound. I love confusing plugins. And then a bit of distortion. And again, nothing fancy. Again, because I'm using it on a variety of rigs, I didn't want to risk using some UAD or my Waves Renaissance or anything like that, because I know I was going to be switching between different rigs. So it's all in-house Logic stuff, and the Fab filter is the only kind of third-party plugin that I've used. Made those by taking Sam Sim's amazing Chrysalis harp library and putting them through my pedal board. Some drones. Phrygia. This sound is like, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but when you yawn, you kind of it creates a kind of some harmonics, and got this kill loop. Again, I'm distorting and confusing, so. And this sound was just one of those mistakes. I stuck the Logic metronome on by mistake through the pedal board, and it came up with this amazing sound. Distortion. So using the AU pitch to actually get it into the pitch of the cue. I also used that loop as a carrier, and then I've got actually the Evo here sucking to that bus 101. So this is basically just a carrier signal. You don't hear that in the piece. It's just being used to suck the strings. So I've got some kill pluck, simple lead, kill simple pluck, good for bass, unstable tone, unstable organ, pseudo woods and brass, woodsits, can't even remember what these are. And a bunch of quirky synths, which I didn't use as much of, but there's actually quite a good bass sound coming up with it. These, I think, were a little bit too, zeitgeisty, which basically means within minutes the entire show dates. And then I use this as a bass. It's kind of got the sub, but it's got just a little something in there that you can latch on to for, people watching on iPhones and that kind of stuff. And then I had a little toolkit of sounds. Which again I used with the sidechain compressor. So this kill loop would suck this pad. all of these on the side chain. I made this triple felt combi for another project, which you're going to see on the Spitfire Mother channel coming soon. It's a really good documentary series. And basically, it's my Schimmel C114 with 3 layers of felt. And I also time stretched the sustain because it's very thug without a sustain. So I created a sustain with that. And again, I gave this away in a previous video linked below. So I'm just going to run this cue down so you can have a listen to it. Very much one of the themes of this series was the heartbeat, because the kind of initial thing that happens is a heart trauma, basically. So if we look at the Pro Tools now, basically we recorded the strings at Air Adele, and the tracking engineer was Nick Taylor, who's amazing, totally shares my aesthetic in, you know, keeping things very much out of the box, allowing me to jump on the faders and annoy him and stand next to him whilst he's working, which was fantastic. And then I got Joe Rubel to do the mixing. And what's great about Joe Rubel is he's great at doing remote mixes in his fantastic studio. And again, he does send a lot of stuff out of the box. The other thing that's great about Joe Rubel, which is also similar to the fantastic orchestrator Ben Foskett, who orchestrated this, is that they never, ever call me and are great at taking stroppy email notes from me. So maybe at a later date, we'll go and visit Joe and have a look at his setup. He's actually next door to us at Spitfire in King's Cross. The first episode, he mixed, I okayed, and he conformed and sent the dub. But if I have time, I like to do it myself. As head of department, I think it's only fair that you should, you know, basically check the dish as it leaves the pass, check that everything's in place. But also, instead of hassling Joe and spending a lot of the budget on doing recalls and going, you could just tweak that out, you know, all of this stuff. The way he stemmed it meant that 99.9% of the time, if there was a little rebalance to do, certainly by episode 2, once we got the idea about how to use these sounds, I could basically just do little microscopic stereoscopic changes, shifts. So what I tend to do is either do clip gain changes or reburn stuff in, as opposed to giving them a Pro Tools file with automation, because some dubbing guys will just kill the automation in preference to kind of balancing the stems himself. And if you're balancing your music so certain bits are more dramatic and stuff, maybe the strings didn't quite, or the way that Joe mixed it didn't quite give you the crescendo you wanted, and your engineer is killing your automation to work it around dialogue, then you're going to be in trouble. So basically we have a full mix which I created from the sum of the stems that Joe Rubel sent. Now, these are titled so the dubbing engineer can get to the bits he wants, but there'll be certain things where, say for example, I've used this pads track to actually put that rotating piano sound in, just basically knowing that we would probably want separation between the triple felt and the sound dust pianos, and basically there weren't many pads in that bit, so we elected to use that stem as a means of separation. We've got the live orchestra. Sounds great. Great recording by Nick there. Our pads track. Our triple felt. I think the way that Joe has treated this is absolutely, it's maintained all of its character, but he's got rid of all of its problems, namely the kind of thudding bottom end, and he's really been bold with the top end. He's really EQ'd out that character. So kind of basses and stuff. Okay, so let's have a listen to how the mixed version compares to the version that I just played. Right, so just returning back to how I organise stuff, we just closed that up, so that's the Logic stuff, and you'll see there were files to Leo and Ben, and let's just take a look at the 1M01. So basically all I sent them was the rest of the mix, the fake guitars and the fake strings. So basically what Ben needed to orchestrate and we needed to record. These then became the playback stems for the orchestra sessions. Got spotting notes there. So again, just very brief notes. They're mainly kind of aid memoirs for me, really. Here we finally end up with the EP2 Conform, which has basically a bunch of different stuff. The delivery to me from Mr. Rubel, the thing that we were just looking for, master mix for dub. And you can see that was all zipped up and then we transferred off to them. No notes back from the dub, so they were able to mix and match stuff. And having looked at the episode, pretty much everything's intact. So I've bundled this Trauma sample set. You can have all of them, all on EXS, I'm afraid, sorry, but the WAVs are in there too, and enjoy them. Hopefully it's an inspiration for you making your own sample set. If you go to the bit.ly link below, that's where you'll get them, and the password is fuckbox.